right, good evening, everyone. We are going to get started. I know some families are trickling in, and we've got some sporting events tonight, so some people are going to be in and out to catch the sporting events. So I appreciate you taking the time to be here, learning about financial aid night and college application night. So before we get started, just a show of hands, how many of you are going through this process for the very first time? Quite a few of you, okay. How many of you are going through this for the second, third, fourth, fifth? Okay. So, to do some quick introductions, I'm Christy Smith. I'm one of the counselors here in the Counseling Center. We've got Katie Jablanowski, who will be presenting with me tonight, and then wandering around in the back, we've got Katie Yezzi and Becky Martino here, and then Leanne Schneider will be joining us shortly. So some housekeeping items. If you do need to use the restrooms are open in the back by the music wing. Both men and women restrooms are open back there. And then we had some handouts in the front. Not necessary that you pick up, but something, some good reading material. We've got some financial aid information, and then some packets that have been mailed home, posted on our Google Classroom, posted on our website, and then as your students are meeting with their counselors, they get them for the third, fourth, and fifth time. So if you're taking them tonight, it might be the sixth time that you've seen some of those documents. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. I also want to point out that all of the counselors are going into English classrooms tomorrow. So if your student takes English 12 or IB English here at the high school, one of us will be in their classroom doing the same exact presentation that you're getting tonight. So for the students who are here, thank you very much, because you're going to get it twice. They're just not going to get the financial aid piece. In those classrooms, we are going to be handing every student a scholarship packet of information for upcoming scholarships. So if your student does not bring this home, please ask them for it, because it's got a lot of valuable information. If your student goes to BOCES and has integrated English credit, or if they go to New Visions and they have English through New Visions, we will get them this packet this week. So do ask for it, probably Friday, and they should have a copy of that. Our presentation tonight is being recorded, and it will be posted on the Vestal YouTube page and in our Google Classroom, if we can post it in both places. So if you have friends, family that weren't able to be here tonight, they will be able to watch us again in the future. So something like that. Also on the front table, I think there might have been some permission slips to go on our College Day field trip. Again, this has been mailed home. It's in the Google Classroom. It's on our website. But if you need an extra copy for a permission slip, those are here as well. All right, so counselors, again, Mrs. Snyder has A through B for the seniors this year. Mrs. Yezzi, I saw her walk in and then walk out. Oh, here she is. This is Mrs. Yezzi. She's C through G, and she's new to us this year, but she was at the Vestal Middle School last year. I'm, again, Mrs. Smith, and I have H through L. Mrs. Jablanowski has M through SE, and Miss Martino has SH through Z. So fortunately for your students, they all had us last year, the year before, so they are not new to us, so we're excited to continue with them. So you're here. We're going to do a first part for counseling and guidance to present the college application information, and then we're going to turn it over to Richard Griffiths from SUNY Broome, who's going to talk about financial aid. So it's two presentations in one tonight to get you some bang for your buck. So as we go through, we're going to be talking a lot about what we're doing with your student at this point in time. So we're doing a lot of college and future planning. We recognize that not everybody is planning on going to college. Some students are going to the military, some students are going off to the world of work, some students are taking a gap year. But most of our students at this point in time are looking at some type of college, whether it's 2-year or 4-year. So we find out all of that information during our senior interviews. every student will get a pass to come down and meet individually, one-on-one with their counselor. This does take us September, October, November. Hopefully they're done before December. Most of us have already started. If your student gets a pass and it says graduation requirements on the pass, it looks different than their typical day-to-day pass, and they are not able to make that appointment, please encourage them to come back down and reschedule, because we really want to make a point of meeting with each and every student to make sure that they are on track for graduation, that nothing is a surprise to you, nothing is a surprise to them, and everyone knows what's expected of them. A lot of the information that we are going to be talking about today and throughout the year will be posted on our Google Classroom. Students have access to that, and parents, you can sign up to get the summaries. Sometimes you don't get a lot of information for the summaries, so we recommend that you ask your student for their username and password, and you can go in and check in our Google Classroom. We also have them on the announcements. We have them on the whiteboards around. We have them on the TVs. We post on the website, so the information is out and about. We do have a ton of college visits from different colleges around New York State, Pennsylvania. Sometimes they come from a little bit further away. I just pulled a snapshot of some things coming up later this week. We have Ithaca, St. John Fisher, Penn State, Scranton, and University of Scranton. Again, these are posted in various places, and if your student is interested in one of these colleges, they can come down, get a pass from our office, and meet the representative. The representative that comes to Vestal High School is typically the one that will be reading your student's application. So if your student is interested in Ithaca College, want to know if it's a good fit for them, they get a pass, they come down, they meet with the representative. The representative's going to make a note that your student came down, and it looks favorably upon your student in the application process. You're getting to put a face with a name. They get to have their questions asked. It's not really an interview, it's just a conversation, but it's a great thing to take advantage of so that you don't always have to drive to the college campus. Sometimes that's not possible. And as you know, it's better to get information firsthand from the person who's going to be reading those applications as opposed to trying to figure it out from their website that you don't know how to navigate. So it's not always possible for students to come out of class, depending on if they have a test or a quiz or a lab. But we do post these way in advance, and every Friday a new list gets posted and updated. We've had 7 colleges come already this school year, and we've only been in school 3 weeks. And I think we're up to like 20 students who have come down to visit. So some colleges come back twice if they're traveling through the area again to pick up kids who may have made some new decisions. But if you're interested in finding out what colleges are coming, you can check out our website. With that being said, we also offer an event called College Day, and this year they're adding College and Career Day at the Broome County. No, it's the Veterans Arena, I think, or the big arena downtown, whatever it's called these days. That's coming up in October. It's always the third Wednesday of October, and students will be able to walk around, talk to different college representatives. This year there will also be career representatives, and then the military and financial aid folks will be there. So we are taking 5 bus loads of students, as we usually do. So if your student is interested in going on that field trip, again, fill out the permission slip. But there is also an evening program for family and friends. It starts at 6 o'clock at night and goes to 8. So if you'd like to be able to walk around with your student in the evening, come on down. They love to have people. And again, it's another great way to meet the representative that's going to be reading your student's application. So applications, where do we get these darn things? So up here that didn't transpose correctly so it's commonapp.org, not OR. The G is down below. Common App is up to, I think, over 800 colleges and universities on there at this point in time. This is going to be the universal application that your student can apply to multiple colleges, in most cases using one application. What's nice about this application, it's commonapp.org, and you can get it on your phone as an app or on your desktop, is that students will put in their demographic information, and then they can go through and search for different colleges. Add those colleges to essentially what's called their shopping list. And then they can work through those questions. What's nice, really, particularly about this program is that you can see when colleges are downloading your application. Your teachers can do recommendations electronically, and you can see when they've uploaded those, and then you can see when colleges have downloaded those. You can see when your counselor has done their recommendation or sent your school profile, transcript. So you have a record of everything in real time. Most colleges are downloading things several times a week. So it's not necessarily within 24 hours your application will be downloaded at that campus, but you can go in a couple times a week and see when things have been downloaded. That is for both private and SUNY schools. So if your student is looking at both private and SUNY schools, the Common App is the way to go. New York State also offers their own SUNY application. I personally don't like it as much as Common App, but it's user preference. So if you're looking at Binghamton, Rockport, Geneseo, Fredonia, those types of schools, and only SUNY schools, some students may choose to do this process instead. It gets a little bit difficult because teachers can't upload their own letters of recommendation, so either students are talking to them, giving them an envelope, and they're mailing it, or sometimes we are able to upload it through our portal, but teachers don't have their own system to upload. Again, if you're looking at both private and SUNY, do the Common App. It's a little less cumbersome than SUNY. SUNY Broom. We do SUNY Broom applications with students right here in our office, starting like today. So SUNY Broom is free if you do it on their SUNY Broom website. If you go through the Common App or if you go through the SUNY website, you're going to pay about $50. So save that money. Let us help your student do it for free. They just need to have their Social Security number. If you choose to do that application at home with them, it's going to take about less than 10 minutes. And again, they'll need their Social Security number. It's very quick. But we like to do it in our office so that they leave, they know that they've already applied to a college, and then they're just going to be waiting for an acceptance letter within a couple of weeks. And then there's the coalition application. We tend not to see that one too much. And then some of the other schools like University of Maryland, they have their own applications. So we're pretty familiar with a bunch of different types of applications, but these are going to be the majority ones that you find. So what are they going to ask you in your application? And I can tell you as a parent who just went through this last year, it takes time. And we tell students, start logging in now, make a username, password, spend a little bit of time each night or carve out a chunk of time over the weekend because they're going to ask you for demographics. Not only demographics of your student, but demographics of who lives in your household, who are the parents, who are the guardians, where did they go to school, what's their job. And so students are going to be asking you a lot of questions, and seeing it from the parent side versus the counselor side, it does take some time. Education for the students, the name of your high school, class rank and GPA will be mailed home on Thursday, so look out for that. Students will need that information on their applications. Start making a list of what activities you've done since 9th grade. Have you been playing a sport? Have you been doing the marching band? Have you been in a club or an activity? Do you do some volunteer work outside of school? Start thinking of those things because they're going to ask you to list some of those on the Common Application. Testing information gets a little bit tricky for students because many schools now are test optional. And so we like to tell students, take a look at your scores, see how you've done. if you've done really well and you fall in the average of where some of the schools that you're looking at, send those scores in because it will help you. If you took a test and you're not happy with your score, or if you didn't take a test and you don't have any scores to submit, that's going to be okay. Every school is a little bit different, but all the SUNY schools at this point are test optional, and many of the other private schools have gone to test optional. So you can talk with your counselor to say, is it better if I submit or not submit? And so you have the option of putting those on, one, your high school transcript that one of our papers asks if you want it on your transcript, or two, if you want to report it on your application. Some schools will say, and it's getting less and less over the years, that they'll use your test scores for scholarship purposes. So make sure that you're reading the fine print on each of the college websites, because it will tell you how they're going to use those scores. I know I was on St. Bonaventure's website, and there's a specific thing about SAT scores on there and scholarship purposes. So just spend some time on each of the school's websites to find out. Writing section. Yeah. It's either all or nothing on our transcript. So if you don't want them to go, I would say no. And actually that brings up a good point, because Binghamton University, for example, will not take our scores from our transcript. You have to send them directly from the testing center. So even if you say yes, you want them on our transcript, Binghamton will request that you send them directly from the testing center. So we can work with students as to where they have them sent to. Yep. On the transcript, right. Yep. If you didn't hear the question in the back, is it all or nothing on the transcript? And that's correct. It's all your test scores or none of your test scores on the transcript. There's a writing section. Most of our students are working on their college essays in their English classes. If you're in IB English, you may not work on it as in-depthly as English 12 is working on it. But I still highly, highly recommend that your students are writing a few drafts, having their English teacher look at it, have you look at it, have us look at it. You want to make sure that that writing piece is reviewed, edited properly, and you want to make sure that it's covered. Mrs. Jablanowski will cover this a little bit more, but you want to make sure that you're hitting some of the key points and that it's generic enough to use to all the colleges that you're applying to. But we'll cover that a little bit more. And of course, your courses and grades. So some colleges are requiring you to self-report your transcript, which is kind of a novel idea. So if they're asking you to do that, you will come to our office, ask for a copy of your unofficial transcript, and you're going to just write down everything that's on the transcript. English 9, 85, English 10, 100. So you're just copying and pasting what we've already given to you. And then we submit it anyways, so then they're going to compare it and make sure that you're being honest. So testing information, like I said, many schools are going test optional, but we are still encouraging students to take the SAT or ACT. So ironically enough, we have an SAT coming up on October 7th. Late registration is today. That is here and in our high school. We do have a November 4th test, late register by October 24th, and a December 2nd test, late registration by November 21st. So all three of those tests will be here at the high school. And then ACT, we have a test offered October 28th with the late registration by October 6th, and then a December 9th test with a late registration on the 17th. This year, we are not offering any ACTs here at Vestal High School, so if you're interested in taking an ACT, you'll have to look at one of the other local high schools. We just didn't have the numbers last year to offer it again this year, but either test is acceptable, and like I said before, many times it's optional as to whether or not you take them. If you're taking an SAT, You have a chance to send your scores to colleges for free when you're registering. If you wait to see what your scores are, there's an additional cost to send those scores. So if you send them to a school that you're not necessarily sure if you're going to end up applying to, they just kind of sit in a file until you do apply. If you send them to a school that you are going to apply, they'll pull them up and use them as you apply. Okay. See if it'll go. All right, letters of recommendation. This is always a fun one. Most students will need at least 2 letters of recommendation as they're applying for different schools. Some might require 1, some might require none, some are optional. So you have some choice and leeway in this part of the process. 1 typically comes from a classroom teacher, somebody who knows you well, someone who can speak to your character, someone who can speak to the highs and lows of your successes and challenges in a particular class. You can pick a science teacher that maybe saw you have some challenges getting through chemistry or physics, whatever, and maybe it wasn't your best class, but you really developed a relationship with that particular teacher. Use that person. So there's a variety of people. There's like 100 staff members that you can choose from here at the high school. It can be someone that you just met the last couple of weeks, or it could be someone that you've had previously. So our teachers are used to writing letters of recommendation, and what we say to our students is if you have a teacher in mind, ask them ahead of time, say, hey, would you mind writing me a letter of recommendation? Typically, they're not going to ask someone that's going to say no to them, so usually people say yes. And if the teacher does say yes, your student should be getting their email address, because if they're using the Common application, they're going to put in the teacher's email address in to the Common App, and it sends an email to the teacher to do it electronically. All the counselors here will be writing letters of recommendation for every single student who applies on the Common application. So that's a lot of students. So when they're getting ready to apply, we ask them to let us know at least 2 weeks ahead of time that they're applying so that we have time to work on their letters of recommendation. On one of the handouts that have been mailed home and we're out front, we have an activity sheet. Students can use this or a resume. And then we have a student sheet and we have a parent reflection sheet. No, we'll take care of it. So that's why this is the student's homework and your homework. So we gather information from families, we gather information from past student records, we gather information from the previous counselors who have been here. We've all been in a position where we've been new to a senior class and we've all written letters of recommendation for students that we're just getting to meet. So that's why it's really critical for your student to come down to their senior meeting so that we can get to know them a little bit more, gather all the information that we need, and write their letter of recommendation. We do not write a form letter. We write it from scratch. Every single student gets a different letter that's pertinent to them. So we do put a lot of time and energy in meeting with your students and getting to know what they're doing. So your feedback on this is really important to help us with that. And with that being said, we also use this information in helping your students find scholarships. So many times we get to pick scholarship winners or applicants based on what they've been involved in. He already left homework. No, he's moved on and he's left some. He's already left the information behind. Yeah, no, we don't bother them at their new job. No, the year that I had 350 seniors, I wrote probably 200 letters of recommendation, so all from scratch. So we are all been in positions where we've been new to students, and we pride ourselves on taking that time to meet with students who are new to us, spend that time, get to know them, to be able to write a personalized letter for them. In some cases, Your student might need a letter from a coach or community member, depending on what type of program they're applying to. So same process would apply, that they would ask that person, get their email, and invite them in the common application. Nope. There we go. I'm going to turn it over to Katie Jablanowski for the rest of it.
Hello, everyone. How are you? I also have a senior this year, so I'm with you this year. She doesn't go here. But so I'm going to talk a little bit about the college essay. The college essay is a really important piece of the application, and it's oftentimes the most challenging piece of the application for students. It requires a lot of reflection on their part, and sometimes it's really hard for them to delve deep and think of something that's going to speak to who they are. That's a hard question. Who are you as a person? We've all had a lot of life experiences. Which one do you pick? How do you choose? So it's really great that all of the students are doing this in their English classes. We've done this the last several years, and it's been very, very helpful to them. The English teachers start off at the very beginning of the year, so they're typically all ready by the time, even if they're doing early deadlines or something like that. So it's very helpful. On this slide are the Common App prompts, which all of the teachers use in their classroom. And you'll see there's a lot of different topics. Reflect on a time you questioned or challenged a belief or idea. Describe a situation that influenced who you are as a person, with the last topic being topic of your choice. It's very open-ended. So this is the part of the application that speaks to who you are as a person that is not otherwise reflected on your transcript and your list of activities. Okay, you don't want to regurgitate what's already listed on your application. You don't want to write an essay about playing varsity soccer. You want to write an essay about an experience that you had while you were playing varsity soccer that influenced you, if that makes sense. So it's really speaking to who you are, and especially when you're looking at schools, you know, the high flyer schools where maybe everyone has 100 GPAs. This is what makes them stand out. This is one of the important pieces that can help them stand out. So it does involve a lot of reflection, and can be challenging. But once it's done, it's a big relief for the students. So the next piece of this is a short video clip from the perspectives of college admissions counselors when it comes to the college essay. So I found this really helpful. Again, some really prestigious schools on here. What are some of the essays that really stood out to them? What are they looking for? Oops, and I just skipped over it. Okay. Okay.
Looking at things like their ability. Whether you write well in their preparation for college, but we're also using it first and foremost when looking at essay, we're looking at things like their ability to write well in their preparation for college, but we're also using that information to kind of see things like their resilience and their level of learning and their intellectual curiosity.
I always tell a student, you know, if you had the chance to come meet with the admissions committee and present yourself in person, would you want to do it? And without fail, students say, yeah, I'd love to have that opportunity. And when I ask why, they say because if they were able to get to know the admissions committee would want to admit them because they would know them and they would get know what they're about and what makes them unique and special.
The essay is really neat in that it's one of the only places in the application where they have complete control and they can write about the things that they've been involved in, the things that they've done.
One piece of advice I would give to every student is to ask someone who knows them a little bit to read their essay and to tell them what impressions they have of you after reading the essay. I think the essays that work best are actually quite simple. I think students get really caught up in thinking that this essay has to encompass their entire life and it has to be groundbreaking and publishable quality. And that's a lot to ask of a high school student. So I always advise students to stick to the simple things that you know. And the essays that stand out the most in my mind are about simple things, very everyday topics.
I have seen some amazing essays about things like students walking their dog or even their bus ride to school.
I think our hope is that if a student were to drop the essay on the floor of their high school and someone were to pick it up that didn't have your name on it, that they'd say for sure, oh, I know that this is so-and-so's essay because it speaks so much about your voice and your experiences and your perspective.
I think my favorite essay that I've ever read came from a student in the Midwest, and he wrote about working at a fast food restaurant. And he wrote about how people were treating him as they went through the drive-thru and how he was treating them back. He called himself an undercover anthropologist, which admittedly was a little nerdy in a brown sort of way. But I liked his essay because I was able to see what he was seeing and feel what he was feeling. So for the purposes of the application, where we as admission officers are trying to get to know the applicant, that's a great essay.
Have you ever wished you lived in a world where your students?
So some helpful information there, interesting perspectives. Okay, so college checklist. Mrs. Smith talked about how, we have to write a lot of letters, right? We have to send a lot of transcripts, and it's helpful when we know when students are going to apply a couple weeks prior to them applying so that we can give a thorough amount of time to writing letters of recommendation and not rushing the process. The college checklist is one way that helps us with that process. So if your student is planning on applying, let's just say early action to Binghamton on November 1st, they know that they're having this deadline, they've started the Common App, they're working their way to submitting this. What they can do is come to the guidance office and fill out a college checklist. It's a really simple checklist. We have white forms, which are just white, and those are for regular deadlines. I know I had an orange form, I don't know where it went. And then we have bright orange salmon color forms, which are for students that are applying with an early deadline, so early action or early decision. So they'll simply fill out the checklist, put their name. If they're using the same application for all of their schools, for example, the Common application, and they're only applying to a couple schools early action and the rest regular, they can list all of the schools that they're applying to on the Common App on one sheet. Okay, they don't have to do a sheet for every school. And they'll just indicate next to the school that they're applying early action, put EA or ED. And then they'll put the earliest due date. So if they have a list of 5 schools and one of them is an early decision deadline, November 1st, they would put November 1st next to the due date. They're going to go through and check off, are they using the Common application? Have they submitted their SAT form to the guidance office? What recommenders did they invite? Okay? Then they turn it into Mrs. Braun in our office, and that's how she keeps track of where students are applying. Okay? She keeps her own logbook. She gets those forms to us, and that helps drive us to get our piece done. That being said, these forms, they're important. We want them to be done, but they're not as important as they once were because the Common application is electronic. So we're getting a lot of invitations from students, which on our side of the Common App organizes all of that information. So in most cases, we already know that these students are applying to these schools because we've gotten an invitation. But this is just kind of like the final piece within our office. Turn in the form, we log where you're applying, you're done when it comes to, you know, what you need to do with our office. I think I'm good. Sorry, I do have a clicker, don't I? Okay. Different application types. I just mentioned a couple of types of deadlines for schools. It's very important to know the differences between application deadlines. There's a lot of different terms. They're not even all listed here. It can get complicated, but you want to read the fine lines when you're applying and making sure when you're clicking an early deadline, you know what that means, okay? So one application type is early decision. Some colleges offer early decision. If they offer early decision, it doesn't mean you have to do early decision. You can choose to do early decision, or you can apply by the regular deadline. Early decision is a binding contract, okay? You can only apply to one school early decision, and you should never, ever, ever do that unless it's hands down your dream school, the only place you want to go, because what happens is when you click early decision, you're going to be prompted to sign a contract. And the contract says, if I get accepted into your school, I will be attending there, and I will be withdrawing all of my other applications to every other school that I apply to, okay? So some students are ready to do that. Many students are not. So just make sure if you see early decision that you know that you want that, okay? Early decision deadlines, some common deadlines are November 1st, November 15th. Another benefit of early decision is that you get a decision early. So a lot of times if you're applying in November, you'll get a decision in December oftentimes. Versus hearing in April, you know, you have a lot more time to look at your options and make some choices. Early action is another very popular application type that we probably see a lot more of in our office. It's similar to early decision in that similar deadlines. Very popular, November 1st, November 15th, sometimes December 1st. So you apply early, you get a decision early. Big difference is it's not binding. You can apply to as many schools early action as you want. So if you are ready to apply, you feel like you're not waiting on anything in your senior year, you're not waiting for SAT scores, you don't feel like you really need to show, you feel like your transcript is strong, that you don't necessarily have to wait to get some senior grades in before you apply, and you're ready to apply, the benefit is, again, you're gonna get a decision on the school earlier in the process. So you can apply to as many schools as you want early action. Most schools offer one or the other, but I have seen a couple of schools that are now offering both. So you just need to know the difference between those terms. You'll see some schools that have rolling admissions. So rolling admissions just means schools are making decisions on a rolling basis. So the earlier you apply, the earlier you're gonna get an answer, and they keep making decisions until they fill their class. So a lot of times you'll see early decision deadlines in like July. That's because, again, they're continuing to make decisions until that freshman class is filled, and then they stop. And then some schools have regular deadlines. So for example, Binghamton University, early action November 1st, regular deadline January 15th, or I think it's January 15th, or the 1st, but I think it's the 15th. So you'll see that as well. Scholarship opportunities. Okay, so I'm in charge of scholarships within our office. I've been doing it a long time, and we post hundreds of scholarships throughout the year. I mean, a vast amount, very different criteria. We've already posted a couple. The majority of them come out closer to the second semester. So within our office, we're posting local scholarships. And a lot of them are $500. Some of them are much more than that. Some of them are on paper. Some of them are online. But long story short, the students that are in our office filling those applications out walk out with a good amount of money at honors night. We have seen a lot less students filling out the applications because oftentimes they require an essay, and that kind of turns students off. because they've worked hard all year. I mean, to their credit, like, writing more and more essays isn't always the most fun thing to do, but a lot of times you can tweak your college essay and make that work for scholarships. So we have local scholarships within our office. We also have Dollars for Scholars, which a lot of you may have contributed to throughout the years. That's a huge scholarship umbrella that is advertised in March. So I highly encourage all students to do that. But just as an example, the last couple years at Honors Night, we've had students walk out with over $20,000 just for our scholarships. It's a lot of money. So it's worth your while. In addition to and I should say, our scholarships are posted all over the place. They're posted on our Google Classroom. If it's a paper application, I will also attach the PDFs to that in case you want to print them off at home. They're posted in our guidance office, and we have the paper applications in there as well. They're posted on the Vestal website. And then there's the scholarship information book, which is more just like a guide. You're going to see some general dates in your scholarship book. It's not like necessarily a rule. We advertise the scholarships when they come to us. So in many cases, it's around the same timeline, but if it comes to me a little bit earlier this year, I'm going to advertise it earlier. So it's just best to have your student keep up with their Google Classroom. And I would say, as a rule, have them stop into the guidance office at least once a week, especially when it gets closer to second semester, and just check out what we have advertised. In addition to local scholarships, there are scholarships that specific colleges have. So that's another place for you to look. So when you're on a college website and you click on scholarships under financial aid, you're going to see a lot of schools give out what are called merit scholarships. So they might give out automatic scholarships based on your GPA. So you don't necessarily have to do anything for those. But then they'll post other scholarships that might have specific criteria that you need to apply for. So that's another place to look. And then there's also some scholarship databases, which are more like national scholarships, like fastweb.com. That's a reputable website if you want to check that out and look for other scholarship opportunities. Fastweb.com. Okay. Financial aid. I'm going to leave most of this to Mr. Griffiths, sitting right over here. But just in general, financial aid, he's going to talk more about the FAFSA, which is the main financial aid application that everyone has to fill out to qualify for federal aid. Again, I don't necessarily want to go into too many specifics about that because I know that he will. But I will say this. We have had families in the past who have said, we make way too much money, there's no point in us doing the FAFSA. Everyone should do the FAFSA because in many cases to qualify for any scholarships, so that includes like Scholarship for Academic Excellence, that's a New York State scholarship that's given out based on merit. We had a student who could not claim her scholarship because she didn't do the FAFSA for that reason that I just mentioned. So there have been situations where you might not think that you need to do it, but you need to do it. It's worth your while. Everyone should do the FAFSA to qualify for aid. The FAFSA is changing this year, and again, I'm going to hand that off to Mr. Griffiths when it's time to talk about all of that. I'm just going to hold it. Okay, things to remember. Just some ending things here. Start early, obviously. Check newsletters. We send home newsletters from the guidance office. They have a lot of really good, important information in them. So I would say, I mean, I know. I get a lot of mail too, especially having a senior with college postcards, and there's just like enough already. But when you get a newsletter, make sure you read it. Don't toss it to the side. There's a lot of really good information in there. Turn in your applications on time, watch your deadlines, turn in your checklist, reflection sheets, activity sheet, and SAT release form. That's for the students. Remember deadlines. Send transcripts from SUNY Room, RIT, any courses that we have that are what are called dual credit courses. So we have a lot of fast forward classes in the high school where the students are taking our class and then they're automatically earning SUNY Broom credit. What happens is once they apply to schools and get a decision and they determine where they're attending, they're going to contact those schools, registrar's office, so SUNY Broom, let's just say, and request that their SUNY Broom transcript get sent to, let's just say, Binghamton, where they're attending. And then Binghamton will determine if and how to use the credits that they got from SUNY Broom. So you send those transcripts after you determine where you're attending school, and you put in your deposit, okay? Send in deposits by May 1st. That's the national deadline to make a decision of where you're attending. Scholarships I just talked about. AP and IB scores. Those are scores that initially you can self-report on your Common application or your application. You don't want to pay the money to send those now, but if you got a really high score and you want the college to see it, you would self-report it on your Common application. And then again, what happens is once you determine where you're attending, you put in your deposit, then you contact College Board and you have whatever scores you want sent to that school, and the school will determine if and how they use your AP scores for credit. Some schools might have placement tests. You'll learn more about that, like once you get accepted, you'll get information from the school if you need to take like normally English or math placement testing. And then eventually you'll have to register for orientation and classes. Thank you, that's my last slide. Okay, are we taking questions now? Okay, Ms. Martino's gonna take any questions that you might have before we present on financial aid.
Does anyone have any questions to start? Yay, a student question.
Is it possible you can get a recommendation from multiple teachers or counselors?
So if you use the Common App, everyone will need a counselor recommendation, but it'll show you right on the Common App how many teachers you need. It'll say 1 teacher, 2 teachers, 5 teachers. You can get up to community members as well too. So it's pretty easy once you see it in there. That was a great question. Because a lot of kids want like multiple recommendations, but you can only send so many because they're getting thousands of student applications too. There'll be so many more great student questions this week, tomorrow when we do these. Anyone else?
FAFSA you apply just once in the beginning of the year and that's it?
That's right. So the FAFSA is just one time, but you have to file it each year. The student is in college. Yep, good question. Everybody has money questions. So should I just bring the celebrity up? He knows a lot about this. We'll take questions afterwards as well. So if anybody has questions, or you can write them on the evaluation sheet, we'd be happy to answer them along the way. Last chance. Great question. So some of the other counselors might know this too, or might have situations already, but when students were coming in to pick up their schedule, they were already saying, some of mine were already saying, my applications are all done. And I'm like, hold on, can we start school first? And some other kids are scared to death. So really that senior interview seems to help a lot. Like, where are you at? What do you need? Today I did a SUNY Broom application, 5 minutes, got it done. And actually, you don't need the social security number anymore. I don't know if you know that, or yeah, right? But you used to. But I think you can put it in, but it's not mandatory. Eventually, they'll get it, yeah. So a lot of kids still really need help looking for colleges. A lot of kids need to go visit, college day. It's pretty scary. They've been coming to school every day for 13 years. Just go to school, just go to, now they have to pick all this stuff. We also do, I can't remember the timing, but we do a SUNY Broom trip for seniors. We take a bus of kids there to just get on a campus, and Binghamton as well. We did one last year, but so we try to help them, you know, as long as we can throughout the year. So anytime from now till January, February. You had a question?
So I was wondering, like, if a kid didn't perform at the same level during the pandemic as they did after the pandemic and before the pandemic, like if they were an A student and that kind of got interrupted by the pandemic, do we mention that? Like, is it better for the student to talk about that in something somewhere? And where would you suggest that we address that in the application process?
That's a very good question. I think it was the first year in the Common App, they were like, don't talk about the COVID. Like, I think everybody was just sick of it, and everybody had the same story, remember? So then they added an extra section in the Common App to talk about like any extraneous circumstances during COVID time. But certainly, as we're moving away from it, growth would be the best thing. You know, since that's happened, I've gotten better. Online learning was really difficult. So you do have an opportunity to talk about it several times in the Common App. Probably don't want to spend your whole essay on that because but I mean, that everybody's experience is different. But that's a great question that we get a lot. Counselors, anything you want to say? No? Yes.
I just want to mention something that's come up recently from me. Is just something to pay attention to. For the colleges that require official SAT scores, sometimes from the College Board, sometimes the more prestigious schools, there seems to be a shift with that since COVID. So prior to COVID, most of those schools required you to pay money through the College Board to have the official scores sent in the application process. You really want to read under the testing policies for each school what they require, because the shift has been that a lot of schools now are saying you can self-report your scores on the Common application, and if you choose to attend our school, then you send the official scores. The only reason I'm saying that is because it can save you a lot of money. Because on College Board, usually I think it's like $12 to send it to each school. It's probably even more now. So before you start spending money doing that, like during the application process, just check the wording on those testing policies, because you might not have to send those test scores officially yet until you determine where you're going. That's just my tip of the day.
That was good. Okay. If nobody else has any questions, we'd be happy to take more at the end. We will let Mr. Griffith start.
All right, so let's talk about financial aid. That's a fun topic. Again, we've alluded to this a little bit earlier, but financial aid is a lot bigger picture than some people think. A lot of times when we think of financial aid, we think about free money, right? And that's certainly part of financial aid, but it includes many other aspects. Scholarships, work study, jobs, student loans. I was trying to think, what did I miss? All right, so it's any type of aid that can be used to help pay for college, which is why it's so important to complete the applications just to see what you can get, and you'll be surprised many times. So the purpose of the financial aid application is to determine what is your need, right? Financial need. And the formula is really very simple. The cost of attendance minus the student aid index, which we'll talk about in a moment, results with financial need. That is what the school is going to attempt to package for you. So let's talk about a few of those terms. Cost of attendance. Cost of attendance is a figure that the government has the colleges prepare, and it's universal. And it consists of direct costs. Those are costs that are going to be billed to you by the school, as well as indirect costs, other expenses of going to school that are not going to show up on a tuition college bill. So they combine those together to get your total cost of attendance. And this, of course, can vary widely from college to college, from low cost of attendance at community colleges and at SUNY schools to very high cost of attendance at certain private schools. So that varies a lot. The thing that we want to remember, and we get a lot of calls on this when we first send these things out, it's like, wow, that cost of attendance is high, right? I didn't think it cost that much to go to community college. It doesn't, right? It's because of the other expenses that are built in there. So let's look at those and get a little more specific. Basically 5 categories of information. They may be adding some more with this new applications coming out, but these are the 5 basic ones. Tuition and fees, obviously that's a direct cost. It's going to be billed. You got to pay that. Housing and food. All right, those of you who've gone to college before used to know it as room and board. The government decided to change that. They didn't think that was descriptive enough, so they changed it to housing and food. Again, now here's where the issue comes up. If we send a cost of attendance for a student that's going to SUNY Broome, that's a local student, there is going to be a component in there for housing and food. It's just not going to be dorm housing and cafeteria food. It is living at home, living in an apartment. That has to be built into the cost of attendance as well, so that students have resources available should they need them for that. Now, hopefully they don't need too many resources if they're living at home, unless you like to charge them rent and have them pay for their meals for you. But otherwise, that's kind of a sunk cost. It's in there. You're already doing that, so it's not a big deal. But it is included in there, so it tends to inflate that cost of attendance a little bit. It looks like, oh, I have to come up with that. No, I mean, you already are doing that. You're already feeding them. You're already giving them a room to live in. Books and supplies are normally an extra cost. Most colleges do have a bookstore that is privately owned. It's not owned by the college. Colleges have just gotten away from that. It's an expense, and so they have private book companies that just set up on campus, and so you'll purchase your books there. Transportation expenses are built in. It does cost, as we do know, to drive nowadays, a lot more than it used to. So that is built into the cost of attendance, and miscellaneous expenses. So for example, just to give an idea, this year our standard cost of attendance at SUNY Broome is $21,000. The actual cost of attending SUNY Broome for tuition and fees and books is probably closer to $8,000 or $9,000. All right? So all that other is the housing and transportation and miscellaneous things, again, that are extra expenses, but not probably to that extent, especially if a student is a commuting student. So that's important when you get those offers from the colleges to really look at those numbers and see what they're talking about, and then to discover what is it that I actually have to come up with? What do I have to actually pay? All right, so we come back to our formula. So we have the cost of attendance. We subtract from that the student aid index. Now, as was mentioned here, FAFSA is undergoing a major renovation to both its form and its formulas. So those who have gone through this before may recognize what was called the expected family contribution, the EFC. And everybody said, that's not what I'm going to contribute. It was kind of meaningless. So they decided to change the name and just call it a student aid index. It's just a number that's a result of the formula that's applied to all that information you're going to supply them on the form that just determines where you stand in the range of eligibility. Needy, not so needy, not needy at all. Wherever you might fall based on income, family size, assets, all of that is put together and comes up with that student aid index. So the student aid index is simply considered to be a measure of eligibility for the student's need and eligibility for federal financial aid. Now, it consists of both income and asset information from the student and from the parent. Right? Often the student is not a very significant portion of that, right? But in some cases it can be. And of course for older students it becomes more important, especially students that are no longer considered dependents of their parents, which under FAFSA definition is 24 years of age. Right? So from 23 on down, they're yours. You're responsible for them as far as information to be filled out on the financial aid forms. Not my rule, it's government's. Now, in order to, let's go on off topic a second here. In order to get all that put together, that index, as I mentioned, we need to fill out an application form, and the form has been mentioned a few times here. It's a funny sounding form, FAFSA. All right, it's simply an abbreviation, stands for Federal or Free Application for Federal Student Aid, FAFSA, FAFSA. It is a universal form that is used to collect information for all of the federal student aid programs, and there are others that we'll talk about later. The FAFSA is completed once per school year based on income information. All right, so I'm going to ask a trick question. When do you do the FAFSA? Every year. And when can you start? Uh-oh, somebody's cheating back there. All right, okay, yes. The FAFSA is available every year on October 1st, except when it isn't, which is this year. All right, because of the vast changes that they've made or making to the application, they are not ready yet. And you say, all right, well, then when will they be ready? All right, good question. Right now, they're saying December of 2023. Notice that they didn't give you a day because they didn't give us one either. We'll see. Keep our fingers crossed that it does come out. They're still tweaking it. They have not released the format to the schools yet. They have not released the formula yet to us. They've given us some vague ideas, but they're still working on it. So this year is an anomaly. You are going to get a much later start on it than normally, at least normally being the last 6 or 7 years that October 1st has been the application period. Before that, it was January 1st. So unfortunately, I can't give you a ton of details about the FAFSA form and what it's going to look like because we haven't seen it yet and because it isn't ready yet. But it is going to ask for basic information. The main thing to remember about it is this. The idea is that the form is going to be easier. And we always like to hear that. Right? I haven't seen it, so I'm not going to say that it is, but it should be easier. There are a third of the questions that they used to ask on it. They have finally linked the application process directly with the IRS so that when you fill out the application, if you don't say otherwise, you are giving them permission to get your income information directly from the IRS. You can opt out of it and say, no, I don't want the IRS to fill it out for me, although that means you'd have to do it, which is not always an easy thing. So I would probably say in most cases you're going to say yes. And when we talk about the IRS, we are talking in this case about the 2022 tax return. The FAFSA operates on what's known as a prior year, or I like to call it odd, even. So on an even year, in this case 2024, the fall is when your student will be attending, we go back to the previous even year, which is 22. All right, so 2 years back. The reason for that is those tax returns are completed. IRS has done all they have to do with them so that they can link and give you all that information in, and so that you can start the application process early in October, except when you can. All right, so because obviously if we were talking about the 23 tax returns, are you going to have those available even in December? No. All right, you haven't even done them yet. So then you have to do estimates, and then you have to correct it when you do the actual returns. So they decided to go back the 2 years. Now, just to touch on it briefly, you may say that the 2022 tax return is no longer reflective of your financial circumstances. And that's in the case where you're going to then contact your financial aid office at your college and explain the circumstances to them. And colleges are required, they didn't used to be, but they are now required to consider what's called professional judgment or special consideration. So it could be permanent loss of a job, illness or disability of a parent, retirement, all those things that say that my income in 22 is here and in 23 or now it's much different. Right? And then they will take that into consideration and reevaluate the financial aid package. But everybody's going to start with the 2022 tax return. Right? So we're going to do that each year, as I said, and hopefully the process is going to be much easier because the biggest part, the biggest headache for most people anyway, of filling out the financial aid part was the financial section. And now you're going to get to bypass most of that. All right? There will still be some questions about assets and things like that, which are, the application is intuitive. All right? As you're filling it, it is online. Everything is online. It is intuitive, so as you're answering questions, it will then prompt it to know what the next question is to ask. So for some people, filling out the FAFSA may only take them 10 minutes. For others, it may take them much longer. People with more complicated financial circumstances, with higher incomes, et cetera, are given additional questions to answer. So it's kind of a smart application. The only other thing, and this is something you'd want to, if you have questions, you want to speak to a financial advisor, either in the financial aid office at the college you're looking at, or you can call us or whatever. Sometimes the hardest part of the application is determining who is the family, right? Because we have lots of different circumstances out there. And so whose information is going to go on the FAFSA form? When you have various parents involved, different relationships, different living circumstances, et cetera, whose income and whose information will go on this form and who is determined to be a family member, right? Is it father and stepmother? Is it mother and stepfather? Is it father and father? Is it mother and mother? Is it unmarried parents? Is it married? There's all kinds of rules involved in that. So if you have questions about that, it's best to ask, and we can help you to try and sort it all out and determine whose income is going to go on the form. All right, so once we've done, once we've completed the FAFSA, that helps us determine your eligibility for the federal programs, which is the largest source normally of federal or of financial aid in general. And it breaks down into basically two types. Gift aid, and we like gift aid, right? That's your grants and your scholarships, it's hard to see there, but and then your self-help aids, which are your student loans and work study. Right? All of those fall within the FAFSA application. All right, this is just a kind of a brief listing of some of the major programs that are in the federal form, some of which will apply and others do not. We're just going to talk about a few of those. The Pell Grant is the major free money from the federal government. The Pell Grant is money that is based, again, on income, family size, things like that. I will mention one other thing for those parents that have done through this before. One of the questions that it used to ask, and it still technically does, is how many members are in the family, and then how many are in college. In prior years, the formula had a component that adjusted your index based on the number you have in college. That is no longer the case. All right? They still left the question on there so that colleges can use it, but the aid index will be the same whether you have 1 or 10 students in college at the same time. That's one of the negatives, I think, of the new process. All right? They did, however, adjust the formula so that higher incomes are now going to be eligible that did not used to be eligible in the past. So, like the government does everything. They hand it to you while their other hand is reaching in your back pocket and taking it back out again. All right? But that's the way it goes. The application for the FAFSA is completed at a website called studentaid.gov. That's a very important website. You should know that. You should go and visit it and get to love it. The studentaid.gov is the federal government's centralized everything to do about money and financial aid. It used to be 7 or 8 different websites that you used to have to go to. Now it's all in one. It is fairly user-friendly, I'll say. It is something that you will use now in the application process, something that you'll use while they're in college, and it's something that the student will use after they've graduated from college if they've used any student loans, because all of that information is going to be on there for all that time, however long it takes them to pay their loans back. That information is there and available. Now, as far as the Pell Grant goes, it's a free grant. The information on here shows that the maximum for this year is $7,395. So if you're determined to have a maximum aid index, that you're eligible for the maximum, at SUNY Broome, you'll get $7,395. Or if you go to BU, you're going to get $7,395. Or if you go to Notre Dame, you're going to get $7,395. Get the idea? All right? That's how much you get regardless of what school you're attending. So what is it for next year? Well, it's part of the federal budget. Do we have a federal budget? Of course we don't. We never do this early. So whenever Congress decides what the budget will be for 24-25, then we will know what the maximum Pell Grant will be. It has always either gone up or stayed the same. It's never gone down. All right? Not in the 40 years I've been doing it anyway, it hasn't. But all bets are off when we start talking about politics, right? Okay. So we'll see what happens. It's projected to increase. That is the president's wish, but again, all he gets to do is sign the bills. He doesn't get to pass them. That's up to Congress. All right, so we'll watch for that, and some years that's February, some years that's March, some years it's been April, even before we've gotten a budget. So we'll wait and see. SEOG is another supplemental grant that's part of the Pell Grant. Now, when we talk about the federal grant programs, there's two types. All right, there's the funded programs, the fully funded programs. So the Pell Grant is one of those. So if 10 people apply and get the maximum, that 10 people get it. If 1,000 students apply and get it, 1,000 students get it. If it's 10 million students somehow get it, the government will make the money. All right, you get it. Other funds, like the SEOG, are a fixed budget amount. It's divided up by a formula amongst the colleges, and the college gets that much money and no more. And so they use it, give it to the students as much as they can, and then when it's used up, it's gone. So guess who gets that money? The people who apply earlier. Right? That's why it's important to try and get this done as early as possible. And that is also true sometimes with the scholarships that colleges have. Again, first come, first serve, and when they run out, they run out. Work study, that's another one of the programs that's got a specified funding level. Each college gets a certain amount. They fund as many jobs as they can, and then that's it. All right, again, first come, first. The nice thing about work study as opposed to a regular job, it is a regular job, of course, but it's a very flexible type of job. Normally, the hours are usually set by the student around their schedule, so, and if, I know in our office we have a work study student, and sometimes she's got a test or something that she wants to take. Don't come in. That's fine. When you come in, there's work for you to do, you do it, and if you're not there, you're not there. Most other jobs don't like that. Right? If you don't show up for your shift at McDonald's, you're probably not going to have a shift at McDonald's anymore. All right, so that's nice, very flexible, 10, 12 hours, depending on the amount of funding that the college has for that job and how widely they want to distribute that money, how many students they'd like to help. Right? Most of those jobs are going to be on campus. There are certain types of off-campus jobs that some colleges can offer. All right, loans. All right, this is our favorite, right? All right, the student loan program. The federal student loan program has gone through a few variations over the 45 some years or so that they've been offered as they are now. Let me talk first in general, and then we'll get into some specifics. In general, student loans are a loan. All right, great. They have to pay it back. They have a fixed rate of interest. This year is being 23-24, the interest rate is 5.5%. Next year will be determined in June of 2024. Based on Treasury bill rates and the Fed interest rate. This is a complicated formula. So we don't know what it is for next year, but dollars to donuts, we know it's going to be higher because interest rates are still going up, right? So we'll wait and see. But so 5.5%. And now when a student gets the loan, that fixes their interest rate for their life of their educational experience. Right? So they will be fixed at the 5.5% rate. Now their brother or their sister that goes 2 years from now, theirs might be fixed at 7%, whatever it is when they go, or maybe at 3%, right, if the rates go down, which, it's like gas prices. They go up quick, they don't come down quite so quickly, all right? But just for reference purpose, under the current law, it is capped at no more than 8.25%. Hasn't been that for a long time, and we hope it is not. So the student loans have a limit on how much the student, now this is a loan that's in the name of the student, there's no cosigner, there's no credit requirements, it's just automatic for the students. They can borrow monies based on their level of college. So as a freshman, they can receive a total, and we're going to look over on the right-hand side, of $5,500. Total of $5,500 for freshmen. Once they become a sophomore, which is 30 credits or more, that increases by $1,000 to $6,500 per year. And then once they get to junior, senior level, minimum of 60 credits, it goes to $7,500 per year for undergraduate. Right? then, of course, if they decide to go on to grad school, then the sky's the limit. The loan amounts really grow and they get really large. And that's good in a sense because grad schools are usually more expensive than undergrad schools, and there aren't any grants and things pretty much by the time you get to grad school. They're done giving you free money. All right, so you're on your own. All right, so that's in general, that's the true for the loans. Now, originally there was one student loan program, but it got lonely, so the government decided to make a second one. Right? Rather than just increasing the one, they put two types in, subsidized and an unsubsidized. Right? And so what's the difference? All right, firstly, of course, subsidized, as the name would imply, is there some sort of a subsidy happening? What is that? That is the fact that that interest that we talked about, the 5.5 or the 6.0 or whatever it happens to be at the time, is not charged on the loan while the student is attending college. And when I say attending, that means at least half time. So if it's 12 credits is full time, they need to be taking at least 6 credits. So all that time that they're in school is essentially a 0% interest rate. And then 6 months after they leave school or cease to attend at least half time, then the loan starts repayment and then the interest starts. So that's a pretty good deal. That's why it's called subsidized. On the other hand, and however, to qualify for that, you have to show need. Right? So while you may be able to get a subsidized loan, Bill Gates or Elon Musk, they can't get a subsidized loan for their kid probably because they make a little bit too much money. Right? So they have the unsubsidized loan. The unsubsidized loan is a standard loan. So when the student gets the money, the interest starts right away, just like your car loan or your mortgage or anything else. There's no deferments on the interest. You don't have to pay it while they're in school. They'll happily just add it to the loan, and the loan will get bigger and bigger and bigger over time as that interest accrues on the loan. But anyone, including Bill Gates or Elon Musk, can get an unsubsidized loan for their child if they really wanted to. Right? There's not income-based. It's not need-based. Now, the way it works is this. So we said that the subsidized loan is need-based, so it determines by the student aid index what you're eligible for based on your student aid index and on your cost of attendance. They both figure into that. And they determine that you're eligible to get so much of the loan subsidized and so much of it unsubsidized. So it works like this. If you're needy and you have enough need, you can get up to $3,500 of the loan as subsidized and an additional $2,000 as unsubsidized for a total of $5,500. And then, of course, same thing for the next years thereafter. If maybe your income's a little bit higher there and you don't quite qualify for the whole loan, well, maybe you can get $1,000 of it subsidized, and the other $4,500 will be unsubsidized. And again, if your income is way up there, then you may get 0 as a subsidized loan, and all $5,500 will be unsubsidized. So it's just a sliding scale tied to the income. Do I care about that as a parent? No, the school will tell me how much that is. All right, they do the calculations. They'll say this is what you're being offered, and you can choose to accept or decline the sub-loan or the unsub-loan, take them both, only take the subsidized if you don't need all of it. And that's the other thing that, I'm sure I don't have to tell you, but I do have to tell students, don't borrow more than you need. Right? If you really, really like to pay loans back, that's wonderful. But, if you continue on and get your bachelor's degree and then get your master's degree, eventually somewhere along there, you're going to take some loans out. All right? So you'll have some if you feel like you're missing out. All right? But try to avoid it as much as possible, which is one reason why, many students try to choose the less expensive option, the community college or the SUNY schools, which are very affordable compared to some other schools. All right? And the most favorite that we have of all then is the Parent Plus loan. Right, so again, if you're looking at a SUNY school and you get a little bit of a Pell Grant or some scholarships, you get the student loan, that may be enough to cover everything. Right? But $5,500 in a student loan isn't going to cut it at Cornell, right, or at Syracuse or at St. Bonaventure. The costs are much, much higher than that, right? And hopefully you can get some scholarships and that'll help, but you're still going to probably have to come up with a chunk of change at those colleges. So they offer the parent the opportunity to borrow that money, right, under the Parent Plus Loan, Parent Loan for undergraduate students, another acronym. It is for parents of dependent students, again, I said under the age of 24. They can borrow up to the entire cost of attendance. I talked about that cost of attendance figure, less any financial aid that the student gets. So for example, again, we'll use our example, $21,000 is the cost of attendance at SUNY Broome, let's say, and you get $15,000 in financial aid, you can borrow the remaining $6,000, right? Whatever's left to the cost of attendance, that's the limit. However, unlike the student loan, it is a standard loan, so there is a credit check, all right, which there is not on the student loan, because the parent is responsible for this loan. It is based on credit, and it usually is looking at a negative credit history, right? So it's, that's kind of the criteria they use. It's a lot more generous than some lenders, all right, as far as who they determine are qualified. It currently has an interest rate of 8.05%. And again, that is going up. I'm pretty sure that will go up because interest rates have already, I think, risen twice since this rate was set. And the Fed is telling us they probably will raise it again in December, so we'll see. And that also is determined in early June, what the rate will be for the Parent Plus loan. So with that being said, that loan is there, it's available. If you choose to use it, that's great. If you have other resources available or other places that you can borrow that offer you better terms than that, certainly look at that as well. Right? For quite a while, these loan interest rates were much, much lower, and they were a pretty good deal, better than you get them from the bank. Now, we'll see. All right? It depends on who you do banking with, I guess. Now, as a parent, as it is required, the credit check is done, the parent can be approved, or they can be denied. If they're denied, they have three options. They can appeal, and sometimes that works. Like, you didn't check my credit scores right, you shouldn't have denied me, and they check and say, okay, yeah, you're right, we'll give it to you. You can get a co-signer, right, that will sign off on that loan with you, and you can decline the Parent Plus loan, and if that happens, then the student is eligible to borrow an additional $4,000 on top of their $5,500 loan that they already have been offered. So it brings it up to $9,500 for freshmen. Which again, if you're just a bit short, you know, at a SUNY school, that'll help. All right, if you're $30,000 short for paying tuition, extra $4,000 isn't quite gonna cut it. That is on the studentaid.gov website. When you go to the studentaid.gov website, there are several tabs. The first one is a student, and then there's a tab that says parent, and you will find the Parent Plus loan information on there. Now, I did skip one thing. When you're filling out the FAFSA, when you're filling out the student loans, and when you're doing anything pretty much to do with the government, everything is online. And so everyone needs a way to fill things out online and sign them online. So each student will have an FSA ID, or a Federal Student Aid ID. So they will go in and set up an ID and a password. And they're going to write it down, and they're going to write it down, and they're going to save it in 100 different places because they're going to be using it potentially for years, right? Not only their educational, but after they graduate, if they want to keep track of their loan and how much they paid and what the interest is that they paid and all that, they're going to use that same FSA ID. So save it. So each student must have one. And as they're a dependent student and we're using parent information, a parent must also have an FSA ID. Only one parent needs to have it, because only one parent is required to sign the form, verifying their income information, et cetera. And they only need one of them. So if you've got 5 kids, you can continue to use your parent FSA ID for each and every one of them. You don't need a separate one for each child. Just each child needs to have their own. Right? So keep that, and again, save that everywhere, because it is easier now if you lose it to get it reset, but it used to be really a nightmare to get it reset. And scholarships, and again, I'll keep that brief because it has been discussed already. The more free money, the better. So scholarships from your high school, scholarships from the colleges. You got to watch in the colleges, and you do on the high school too, because there's a limited time window. So you want to make sure that you don't miss it. For most colleges, the scholarship windows maybe January through March, maybe April, some schools, depending on how much money they have. And then once it's shut down, that's it. All right, you don't get anything for that school year. They've already decided who's going to get them. So make sure you know those scholarship windows at your colleges. Many colleges, VU and SUNY Broome, have gone to what we call a single app. So you fill out one scholarship application for all 150 some different scholarships that we have at our school. It used to be every scholarship you wanted to apply for, you had to apply for separately, similar to what you have to do at the high school because they're coming from all different sources. Right? But since it's all being held by the College Foundation, they do the work. Right? It takes you maybe 45 minutes or so to complete the whole application, and then they go through it and they sort it out based on this scholarship is for women only, this scholarship is for math students, this scholarship is for nursing, this scholarship is for students that live in Chemung County. I mean, when people give us money, we don't turn it down, but they get to make the rules. All right? Who's eligible to get this scholarship? So they sort through all that, and then they decide who's going to get it. All right, so do that. Fastweb.com was mentioned, and that is up there for you to see. Also, studentaid.gov, the student aid website, also has scholarship link in it as well. You want to use something like that because those scholarships have all been fully vetted. They've all been checked out. They're all legitimate. There's no schemes. There's no selling of names and all that sort of thing. They've all been checked and had to meet the standards that these two websites set. When you start looking at college and you start talking about financially, you're going to get emails. You get lots of emails, and most of them you can send right to your spam folder. Right? Never, ever, ever, never, never, ever, ever, you get the idea, ever pay for a scholarship application. They always are free. There's never any charge, never any commitments, never any requirements to apply for a scholarship. There will be places that will offer to find you scholarships for a small fee. And one of two things will happen. Either you'll never hear from them again, or they'll send you junk. They'll send you a FAFSA application. Hey, we found one for you. FAFSA's free. Everybody can apply for that. You don't need somebody to tell you that one. So just avoid those. Check with other scholarship sources, your employer, companies around the area, credit unions, volunteer fire organizations, Kiwanis, Rotary, all the different charitable organizations that are out there. All of them, or most all of them, have scholarships. And some of them have the same problem that even we have in college level, and I'm sure that the counselors here can testify to. Sometimes we have a hard time giving away the money because not enough people apply. Right? They think it's too much work. Right? If you've got to spend an hour and you can get $5,000, don't you think, I'd like to have a job that pays me $5,000 an hour. All right, pretty good job. All right, so take the time, make the application. Too many students do not, and they leave the money on the table. And so every year we're scrambling toward the end of the year trying to, these people say, you've got to give away the money that I give you each year, so we have to find somebody to give it to. All right, so make it easy on us and apply. Check with your employers, et cetera. Any types of reimbursement that you might be able to get from an employer. All the sources that you can find money, and there are a lot of them. And then, of course, if you happen to be fortunate enough to live in New York State and you're looking at a New York State college, we also have funding that the state offers through HESC, Higher Education Services Corporation. And you'll see that in a second here. This is New York's website, what it kind of currently looks like. They change the picture every so often. All right, but hesc.newyork.gov is the name of the website. It has the major program is the TAP program, Tuition Assistance Program. If you are completing the FAFSA form, when you get to the end of the FAFSA form and you click submit, you get a confirmation page where it gives you estimates of what you're going to be eligible for. There will be a box on the right-hand side that says, would you like to apply for your state aid? And if you, when you filled the FAFSA out, listed a New York State school and they see that you're a New York State resident address, they'll automatically send you to the TAP application. Coming back, when you do fill the FAFSA form out, it asks for what colleges you're going to go to. You were able to list up to 10 schools on the FAFSA. Now you can list 20 schools under the new form they tell me. All right, so you can put up to 20 schools in there. All those schools will then get the information from the FAFSA. All of those schools then have the ability to make an offer to you if you decide to apply to them. They'll have the access to that information to be able to determine your eligibility. So when you get to the end of the FAFSA, click on it, take you right to the tab. You just keep right on going. You're going to answer half a dozen other questions or so. They're going to ask, because it's New York State, they can't use the adjusted gross income like the FAFSA does. They have to use New York State taxable income. So they'll ask you for a different number off of your tax form. Right? Other than that, and then you sign it, submit it, you're done. If you don't do that when you fill out the FAFSA form, you just need to wait about a week or so, and then you can go back onto that website directly and apply there, because in the meantime, FAFSA will have sent to the state the relevant information from your FAFSA form so the state knows who you are when you sign in. All right, and they just go right from there. All right. So TAP is the major source of fund, tuition assistance program stands for. It is based, again, also on the 22 tax return. They try to match the government. They also usually come out October 1st. They haven't really said what they're going to do this year. I think they're going to have to wait. Since they do get the information from the FAFSA, they're probably going to have to wait till the FAFSA is available. They haven't really committed yet. But again, it will use the 22 taxes. And TAP, unlike the Pell Grant and the student loans and the SEOG and the work study, the tuition, the TAP award, the New York State award, is a tuition-only award. So it'll only cover tuition cost. It will not pay for room and board. It will not pay for books. It will not pay for fees. All right, only tuition. So the maximum award for TAP currently is $5,665, or the tuition, whichever is lower. So again, if you're attending a community college, if they're like us, our tuition is about $5,500 or so per year. So that's the most you can get, because it will only pay the tuition. If you're going to Syracuse and their tuition's, $45,000, you can get $5,665. All right, great. It is tuition only. Excelsior. Okay, this is my fun one. If you were alive and paying attention to anything in 2017 or so, the airwaves were flooded with the commercials. New York State now offering free tuition, all right? Or worse yet, on some of the commercials, people were holding up signs that said free college, right? It is not. Right? There is no such thing. Right? It is not free college. It is a scholarship program that will pay for tuition only. Again, no fees, no room, or no housing and food, no transportation, no books. It doesn't pay for any of those things. And so it started in the 2017-2018 school year, so they're finally figuring out how to work it. It's getting a little bit better. It is for New York State residents or individuals who graduated from New York State high school, attending a New York State college, and it is technically the program only for SUNY schools, the 64 SUNY schools. However, they have another version of it called the ETA, or Enhanced Tuition Award, which applies to some private schools. I think Cornell is one of them. A few private schools that agree to participate in the program. Most of them did not, right? But if they did agree, they will apply to those schools under the ETA program. You must attend, as I say, for the Excelsior anyway, you must attend a SUNY or CUNY college. You must attend full-time. And I'm going to show you a whole bunch of other rules here in a second if I can get it to flip. All right. It is a last dollar in scholarship. What it means is this. It will pay tuition that isn't already paid. So you'll take your tuition and it'll subtract what you get for the Pell Grant. It'll subtract what you get for the TAP award. It'll subtract any scholarships that you received. And if there's anything left over, that's what it'll pay. All right? So in New York State, I think that means approximately 75% of all applicants won't get any Excelsior because their tuition is already covered by the other sources, all right? Because of the eligibility and the average income level of upstate New York, et cetera, et cetera. All right, so It helps more the mid-income or upper income levels we'll see in a moment. Students, right. Students must be enrolled full-time, at least 12 credits per semester, but must finish 30 credits in total for the year. So guess what? 12 and 12 is only 24. So you're going to have to take more than 12 credits, or you're going to have to attend summer school or a winter term. All right. However, if you attend a summer session or a winter session, Excelsior doesn't pay for that. They only pay for the fall and for the spring, the two major terms. If you are in a 2-year program, you must graduate in 2 years. The money runs out after that. If you're in a 4-year program, you get it for 4 years. That's the maximum, and you must finish and graduate. And you must complete at least 30 credits every single year, or you are dropped from the program. Of course, you must pass all the courses. I mean, not to say that you can't fail courses, but if you fail it doesn't count towards the 30 credits, so you're going to have to make that up. It does not pay for remedial courses, so you have to take what we call the 090 courses, remedial English or remedial math class. It doesn't pay for those. It doesn't count those. It has a residency requirement, and when I say residency, it has a post-residency requirement, which says that after you finish your education, whether that's your associates, your bachelor's, your master's, your PhD, whenever it is you get done going to school, then you have to remain and work in New York State for a period equal to the time that you received the scholarship. So if you got it for 2 years or you got it for 4 years, you get to stay in our state for a couple more years before you can move. If you do not, then the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers or the Transformers or whatever you want to call them, the scholarship transforms into a loan and you pay it back. Right? They will give you up to 10 years to pay it back, and they charge a 0% interest rate. Very generous of them, but you have to give it back if you don't meet that requirement of living in the state and paying taxes to Albany. And that is just, come on. It uses the same income information as far as the 22 tax returns. It does, so 2022, it does have an income limit. It will only pay for adjusted gross income up to a maximum of $125,000. So that is what you're reporting on your FAFSA form. That is the parent income plus the student's income, if they have any. So they add those two together, and if it's $125,001, you don't get it. If it's under that, you get it. And as I said, if your income is more 70, 60, 50, you're probably not going to get it either, because you're going to get Pell and you're going to get TAP at those income levels, and that's going to pay your tuition, so they're not going to have anything left to pay. So it's a very narrow range, really, of those who tend to benefit from that program. It started at 100,000, and then it went to 100. The second year to 110, and in the third year it went to 125, and in the fourth year they were going to raise it, but they didn't. And in the fifth year they were going to raise it, but they didn't. And in the sixth year, you get the idea. The legislature is shot it down every year, so it's still at $125,000, even though we're whatever we are, 6 years or so into it. Hello. All right. Okay. So again, just a brief synopsis. Apply for aid at studentaid.gov. That's where you'll find the FAFSA application. Collect it, get an FSA ID for yourself, the student, and for the parent. And then watch for your aid report, which actually, I guess they're changing the name of that to, I can't even remember what it's going to be called, Student Reconciliation Summary or something like that. They're like changing words around. And keep that information and keep it in a safe place, and always check with your financial aid office. Also, you'll want to check with, especially the private colleges, you're going to want to check if they require something more than the FAFSA, like the CSS form, which just collects more information than the FAFSA, especially now that the FAFSA collects so little information. If they're going to give you scholarships of $20,000 and $30,000 and $40,000, they want to make sure they're giving it to the right people. So they're going to ask you for a lot more information on this CSS form besides what's on the FAFSA. So, check it out. Most of the SUNY schools, the FAFSA is it. Right? But just double check with the financial aid office and make sure you've applied for everything that you need to do with them. This is a snapshot of what the studentaid.gov looks like. So considering school gives you information about what kind of financial aid and stuff there is in school, all the process of applying for loans, etc. There's the parent tab, and then they have an in repayment tab, so you can keep track of everything that you are in debt to, all right, after you've graduated. And that's quick. It's generally easier, and the way that the questions are asked, it's generally easier if you sign in with the student ID and then complete. In fact, it may be, and they haven't verified this, I've heard it through the grapevine, that you may have to sign in on the student ID and fill out the student part and then get out, and then the parent will have to sign in with their ID and do their section. That's what we're hearing through the grapevine, but they have not confirmed that yet, which actually kind of makes it a little more difficult because you got to be different people signing in and out. When the student applies for student loans, they're signing with their FSA ID. If you're going to apply for a Parent Plus loan, then you will sign in with your parent ID because you're the one borrowing it. So that they're going to start with that, and then when you fill the loan form out, eventually it'll ask for the student information and it'll match it up for the student that you're applying for. Okay. Yes. I wish I could. Okay. Yeah, every year SUNY has what's called SUNY Financial Aid Days, and various colleges around the state have a workshop on a Saturday where you can come in and sit down on a computer and we'll help you to fill out your FAFSA and do all that good stuff. Right? They haven't scheduled one this year because it's usually in October and we don't have an application, so there's nothing we can fill out. And by the time it does come out, like I say, it's going to be Christmas or after, so I don't know whether they'll have one. However, if you need help filling out a FAFSA, you can always come into our office and we will help you to fill out the FAFSA one-on-one. If you're going to do that, please, as much as possible, try to get your FSA ID first, because sometimes it takes a day or two before that becomes active, because they got to verify you are who you are, so that you can sign the application. And you can come in and get help from us. And notice I didn't say that you had to be enrolled in SUNY Broome. You don't, all right? Okay? I have filled out financial aid for students going to Harvard and to NYU and to Cornell and to Syracuse, whatever. Not that you can't get help from other colleges, but sometimes it's harder. Especially, if you're talking about, going to SUNY Buffalo and they got, 40,000 students, you can imagine they don't have a lot of time to do one-on-one stuff. Right? But we will do that to help you because we are a community resource, right? And so we're there to help. Or if you just have a basic question, you can call and we can answer that or try to answer that for you, or give you the right guidance on where to go to find the answer to that. Yes, sir. Yes, the TAP is only good at New York State colleges. If you're going to Pennsylvania, too bad. If we have some schools, some students that come from Pennsylvania, they can't get TAP because they live in Pennsylvania. The two states, Pennsylvania has its own state grant, but it's only for Pennsylvania schools. New York and Pennsylvania don't like each other. They don't share anything. Even though we're right here, we're about 4 miles from the border, right? And we do get a lot of crossover students, certainly, but it's New York for New York only. It's very stingy. Yes, sir. After you finish school, they'll let you go away to grad school or whatever, but then you got to come back. It does not, is what we're told. Now, again, it's been in place like 6, 7 years, and the rules have changed like 10 times. So they keep morphing and changing it. So just check with the latest requirements. But if you apply for the Excelsior, and the application for the Excelsior is not part of these, you have to fill out a separate application, which is available in March or in April or in May or whenever they get around to it. All right, it's been different every single year. And it's open until usually the end of August. So it has a smaller application window for that. And if you apply and you meet the requirements, the student will get a contract in the mail. Read it, all right, because it's got all the rules in it, and if it's a tightrope without a net, all right? So if you break one of the rules, you lose it, all right, and you don't climb back up again, all right? It's a one-shot deal. So make sure you read that contract before you sign it so you know what you're agreeing to. That is correct. They're looking at where the paycheck is coming from, right? Even though you may be, working for Microsoft in California, but you're a remote programmer and you're living in New York. No, they've looked at that. They've thought of that. Other questions? And again, anytime you do have questions, on the first slide, if you had taken a picture of it, is our contact information, but it's pretty simple. Our email for the financial aid office is finaid, F-I-N-A-I-D, finaid @sunybroome.edu. Just like our admissions is admissions@sunybroome.edu. And our student accounts is 2 accounts at SUNY. So we try to keep them pretty simple. Yeah, back. Right there, okay. So they're finaid @sunybroome.edu. Also have my personal email there. That is the office number. Anybody who answers, I have very good people that work in our office for me. They can answer 98% of the questions probably that you ask. And if they don't, they'll turn around and yell, Rich, all right, and then I'll take over. All right, but they're very good at what they do, and they can answer a lot of questions for you in general, or tell you how to get the answers or where to go, where to find things. Okay? Anybody else? I appreciate your attention, that nobody snored too loudly during the presentation. That's good. But just the main thing to remember is students especially get to know your financial aid office. Right? In addition to all the scholarships that we have, there are some undesignated funds that the foundation has that they give as a slush fund to me, all right, to our office. And when we have students come in and they've got some issues and something gets messed up and they lose some scholarship, I have some money that I can sometimes give to them to help them along the way. All right, if they've just got a small need and they're a little tight right now, we might be able to find them some money. So get to know your financial aid office, whatever college you go to, because they can help you with a lot of questions. And students, when you are going to college, your financial aid is a complex calculation of a whole bunch of factors, assuming a whole bunch of things. If you are looking to change any of those things, you may change your eligibility. So always check with your financial aid office before you do anything, before you change majors or drop classes or add classes or take a semester off. Always check with the office to find out, how will this affect me? The government has various rules. They have various deadline dates, and literally this happens every semester. We have, this year, the date happens to be Halloween, October 31st. If you drop the day before that, we have to send 40% of your money back to the government. And guess now who gets that bill? You do, all right? If you withdraw from the school entirely. If you wait till the next day, we get to keep 100% of your financial aid, and you don't have to worry about having this sudden big bill coming from the college. You just have your normal bill that you would have had you finished the semester. So there are certain dates that are important. So always have them check before you do anything, because unfortunately, if you do it first and then come to us after, we say, sorry, you should have waited, all right? We can't go back in time. We don't have a time machine. So always check and make sure that you know what you're doing will not have an adverse effect on your financial aid, because there are so many rules involved with it. Well, it's more based on the number of credits, et cetera, that you're carrying as opposed to the type of credit that you're carrying. But yeah, there are some study abroad programs that are financially eligible and some that are not. It depends on how the state looks at them as far as the state education department and what credits they give or don't give for those, because there's some short-term ones that don't really earn credits per se. And then you're on your own for those. You can set up an FSA ID. Yeah, that's available. The FSA, still people will actually, and they've got about 3 more days that you can still apply for a 22, 23 FAFSA. But your FSAID, since it's just good in perpetuity, it doesn't matter when you set it up. It's not year specific. So yeah, go ahead, set it up, let them, so you have it, and then like I say, you write it down in a bunch of places. You got a safe deposit box, you got a little safe in your house, you got, put copies of it everywhere so you know where it is, because if you're like me, I have like 72 different passwords and I never remember any of them, so I have them all written down and kept. Yes, sir. Currently 5.5, I would guesstimate that they're going to be at least a half a point higher or a little bit more probably next year. It's fixed at that rate. It locks you in. Yeah, that's one of the things that they did a little while ago. That's a nice feature. It doesn't change for that student year to year. It just changes for future students. Yes. Yeah, your scholarships you're going to apply for every year. You're going to do the FAFSA again. You're going to go to TAP again. You're going to do the Excelsior. You don't have to do the application again. You have to do what's called an income data sheet, where you just update your income figures to make sure you still make under the 125,000. Great. Well, what happens is, and that's happened sometimes, the interest rates drop down quite a bit when they dropped, the Fed rates down to virtually 0%. The interest rates dropped, and as long as you had a certain amount of loan balance, you could consolidate your loans, which just meant they repackaged them and put them in at the new rate, which was a good deal for people to be able to do then. Now, consolidation is not such a good deal because it's at a high rate. But yes, you can do that. All right, other questions? Okay. You'll think of them, and if you do, call, ask, check out their website, studentaid.gov.